glass to clink. I think that's like the normal thing that people do. Am I on?
Okay, everybody.
Yeah, I was told. Yeah. Hi. Hi. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Woohoo! Yeah. Okay, so I think everybody knows who I am. So, so I'm going to say a couple of words that I prepared, First of all, Tyler and I would sincerely like to thank everybody for trekking out to Brooklyn. Yay, Brooklyn! And for people who got lost, thank you for finally finding your way here. So amazingly, some people have asked, 22 years of marriage. Yes, that's how I'm measuring time these days, Tyler's book has been published. And yes, for those of you who want to know, my name is Natasha, so yes, that's me. We know that some of you have pre-ordered the book, and you may not have received your book yet. So we designed some book plates, and Tyler will sign those for anybody who wants. So if you want one, you haven't gotten your book yet, just meet him afterwards and he'll sign it. So a couple of thank yous. We want to thank Alex and his Barrow's team, Barrow's team, for hosting the event. Please try one of their signature cocktails, and please tip your bartenders. Before I introduce Tyler, I want to make my little Academy Award speech. So first of all, we'd like to thank our families, especially our moms who couldn't be here. And to our siblings, thank you for your unwavering love and support. To Jacob Schmullian and Sagging Meniscus Press, thank you for your confidence in Tyler and in this book. You believed in the project for forever, right? To Anne-Marie Hanto, thank you for bringing the cover to life. To our family and friends who helped in putting this event together. Sean, who took us to Costco. I mean, woohoo! Probably an experience my brother and I will never repeat. So Paul, Akiko, Sarah, Samyan, David, Angela, our friends who were there, even when we finished, even sending the text to ask for help, they were there. Matt and Jen, we asked and you answered. To the pandemic crew, you know who you are. We love you guys. And for our friends who took planes to get here, Donna from Colorado, Martha from Vermont, Penny who flew in from Memphis via Italy. I mean, seriously, Penny, I love you. I mean, we wish that Pat could be here too. And our friends who came from far-flung places like New Jersey and Connecticut and upstate New York, and my niece and nephew came from Astoria who got lost. To all our Tyler's readers, before, during, and now after, thank you. To Tyler's writing group, Sarah, Greg, Sasha, Douglas, thank you all for the inspiration. I can't name everyone else because I'd end up naming everyone in this room. But you get the picture. We would not have gotten here without you. So it now gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce you to Tyler Gore, writer of My Life of Crime, my husband. I'm so proud of him.
All right, this is a truly overwhelming experience here. I didn't think there would be so many of you. So I want to say thank you so much. That means so much to me. So thank you all for coming all the way to Industry City in Sunset Park. So the greatest mystery of me is, how did someone like me wind up with someone like Leigh? And I don't know the answer to that. So anyway, I don't know where Leigh is, but thank you, sweetheart. She made all that food and everything. So I also want to say that the book is dedicated to Leigh, my partner in crime, and also to my dear friend Faye Webern, who wrote a fantastic book called The Button Thief of East 14th Street. She passed away in 2019 at the age of 91. Her memoir is about growing up on the Lower East Side in the 1930s, but I am very happy that her daughter, Martha Chaikin, could be with us here today. She came all the way from Vermont, so, you know, in memory of Faye. And while I'm doing this kind of thing, I got to give a shout out to Sagging Meniscus Press. Woohoo! My publisher, Jacob Smulyan, is in the house, and Anne-Marie Hantho, the Sagging Meniscus designer, and a special thanks to all you guys who pitched in all day and all week. Thank you so much. And all right, enough of that, because this is not the Academy Awards. So I'm going to read the opening section of the title story, I hope, which is called My Life of Crime. And after I'm done, we're going to break. My voice is getting hoarse. After that, we're going to break for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to go hide somewhere and vape and drink, and then come back here and read a little more. And in that intermission, you guys can get drinks and food. All right. Give me 1 second. This feels so crazy. All right. My Life of Crime. No one likes a practical joker, my mother had warned me. But hey, my mother was out shopping. We lived in suburban New Jersey. It was a dreary day, rainy and cold like that day in the beginning of The Cat in the Hat, and there was nothing to do. None of my friends were home. So I picked up the phone and ordered a pizza for my neighbor across the street. I walked to the front window where I could peer at my neighbor's house from behind the curtains. But there is no instant gratification with this sort of prank, and patience has never been one of my virtues. So, after about 5 minutes, I got up and ordered another pizza from a different shop. Then, either to kill time or to satisfy some vague sense of proportion, I called a third pizzeria. This time, under the assumed name of Andre Breton, I ordered 2 pies, one with sausage and one with mushrooms and green peppers. And then I went to wait at the window. When the first delivery truck from Domino's arrived and the driver trudged up the walk carrying the pie I had ordered, I felt a familiar rush of excitement, the giddy thrill of the voyeur. I had a relationship with this man wetly slogging up the walk, but he didn't know it. I had secretly orchestrated his mission and knew something about how it would end, that is, in disappointment. It occurred to me that this was how God must feel all day long. Now I watched my neighbor open the door, and even from that distance, I could see his puzzled expression as he shook his head and slowly closed the door. Like Sisyphus trudging down the hill for his rock, the Domino's guy returned to his truck with the noble, dejected air of one who knows that in spite of all his efforts, the fates have singled him out for misery. He pulled his truck into the road just as the truck from Tony's Pizzeria arrived. The Domino's guy slowed down for a moment, as if to assess the situation, and then apparently decided to wash his hands of the whole thing and continued on his way. The Tony's guy got out, paused for a moment to cast a long, perplexed gaze at his competitor's truck, shrugged, and removed a pie from the passenger side of his own truck. When my neighbor opened the door, I observed with fascination how quickly his expression could change from mild surprise to extreme irritation. He shook his head emphatically, then peered over the driver's shoulders as if looking for a hidden camera. It was at that moment the third truck from Ray's arrived, pulling up behind the other truck. My neighbor, who has a short temper, believe me, I know, pushed past the Tony's guy and stormed out towards the third truck, gesticulating angry. Then he suddenly stopped in the middle of his lawn and, mute with rage, intently scanned the houses around him as if dormant psychic powers might help him locate the culprit. For a tense moment, his gaze passed directly over my window, and I held my breath. The moment passed, the drivers were dismissed, and after my laughter subsided, I considered calling another place. Sure, why not make a day of it? In the heavily Italian neighborhood where I grew up, there are more pizzas than, I don't know, Starbucks, fire hydrants, Chinese restaurants, whatever, there are a lot. And I was prepared to arrange for every single one of them to visit my neighbor. But just as I reached for the phone, it suddenly rang all by itself. I picked up the phone, and a man said, "Hello, Mr. Breton. This is Ray's Pizza. Did you order 2 pies for delivery about a half an hour ago?" His tone was suspiciously smug, the way it is when someone asks a question that they already know the answer to. Uh-oh, I thought. I'd given them a false callback number, so how did they know to call me here? But I kept my head. "This is the Duchamp residence," I said calmly. "You must have the wrong number." He laughed snidely, and my heart began to pound. "No, I don't think so," he said triumphantly. "You see, we have caller ID." Oh, Jesus. I had forgotten all about caller ID. It hadn't existed the last time I had done this. I think it's probably important to explain that the events in this narrative took place at the dawn of the digital era. Cell phones were the size of bread loaves and were used exclusively by stockbrokers. The internet ran on tin cans and string and was used exclusively by nerds. A phone was a landline phone, period, a stationary object hardwired into the guts of your house, or in this case, my mother's house. Caller ID was the gee-whiz technology of the day, and I had completely forgotten about its recent proliferation. This was not good. My mother was due to arrive home within the hour, and I didn't want her to find out how I'd spent the afternoon. It wasn't that I was afraid of punishment. It was shame. I was really getting too old for this kind of thing. After all, it's one thing when your 10-year-old finds it amusing to play games with the telephone, but when your son is a 28-year-old man, well, the word that comes to mind is disturbed. There was an urgency then in getting rid of this guy. As an experienced prankster, I knew the rule about getting caught. No matter how incriminating the evidence, deny everything. And I knew the corollary of this rule. Believe your own lies or you won't sound convincing. I took a deep breath, summoned up an appropriate sense of righteous indignation, and replied, "Listen, buddy, I don't care what your caller ID says. I didn't order any pizza." With shaking hands, I hung up the phone and exhaled. Then the phone rang again. "Hello, this is Ray's again. Look, maybe you didn't order the pizza, but someone from your line did. Do you have any children?" What I said next was very stupid. I said yes. I suppose I was trying to play the part of the indignant suburbanite to the hilt. In fact, I was imagining that I was my neighbor across the street, and after all, he had children. But, I added quickly, Josh wouldn't do something like that. Of course, the phrase "something like that" implied that I knew more about this scheme than I was letting on, but the man seemed not to notice. He was more concerned with my son, Josh. He was sure he'd found the culprit. I was now burdened with defending the honor of a son I didn't have. I began to panic, and my usual reaction to nervousness is to start babbling. Somehow, during our conversation, it became established that Josh was 11, a good student, that he hadn't been home for at least an hour, that he was playing with someone named Benjamin. I was beginning to have trouble remembering it all, so I tried to turn the conversation away from Josh Duchamp by disparaging the supposed merits of caller ID. I claimed to have seen an episode of 60 Minutes in which the accuracy of caller ID had been tinged with doubt. "Oh yeah," the man countered. "Well, I've never had any problems with it." "Well, now you have," I said, and hung up the phone again. 5 minutes passed, and I decided I was off the hook. Then the phone rang again. It was like a leak I couldn't plug. It was a different person this time. "This is Officer Antonelli of the Cloister Police," a gruff voice said. I was now in such a panicky state that I didn't soberly consider the extreme unlikelihood that I was speaking to an actual police officer. I began to wonder if ordering pizza under false pretenses was a punishable crime. I tried again to blame the caller ID, but the alleged policeman claimed to have expertise on his side. "These are very sophisticated machines," he told me. "In my expertise, they are 100% accurate." He certainly sounded like a cop, or at the very least like someone who had watched a lot of cop shows. The topic of conversation turned back to the character of my fictional son, Josh, and I was beginning to doubt that Josh was innocent. I began to lose hope. I was going to jail, and Josh would grow up fatherless. I took advantage of a pause in our conversation to make a desperate bid for freedom. I sighed dramatically, and in a weary voice I said, "Well, I guess we're going to have to take this to court. Give me your badge number, and I'll have my lawyer contact you." There was a long pause on the telephone. Clearing his throat, the would-be cop adopted a kind of blustery boys will be boys tone and said, "Well, Mr. Duchamp, there's no need to go that far. I'm sure you believe your son didn't do it, but I think you should talk to him when he gets home. Oh, and I'm sorry to say that Rays won't accept any more calls from this number." Yeah, his bluff was called, but I felt no sense of triumph. I quickly agreed to the offered terms and hung up the phone. For a long time, I sat quietly in the kitchen, unhappily considering the current trajectory of my life. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So, I'm going to do one more reading. I'm going to give you guys a 10-minute break, another short reading after that. Get some drinks. They're awesome. And have some of the delicious food that Leigh made. And I'm going to go out and nervously vape for 10 minutes and then come back and read again. And then after that, I'll let all you guys back out. Thank you so much.
All right. So here's Tyler again. Woohoo!
Okay. All right, everybody. Hi. So what I want to read now is the opening section of Appendix, which is the really, so Appendix is the really long-ass essay that occupies about 2/3 of the book. It's like a book within a book. And this is the major project that I was working on that's part of this book. It has 5 parts to it, but I'm only going to read just a bit of the opening section. The first part, which is called Vestigial, and it opens with a quote by Charles Darwin. And I want to adjust this slightly. I'm sorry. All right. That's good. Okay, so here we go. This is from Appendix and the opening section, Vestigial. And here's the quote. "It is curious that I remember well the time when the thought of the eye made me cold all over. But I have gotten over this stage of the complaint, and now small, trifling particulars of structure often make me very uncomfortable. The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail, whenever I gaze at it, makes me sick. Charles Darwin. The word vestigial is invariably paired with another word, and that word is organ. And the whole enchilada, vestigial organ, refers almost exclusively to the human appendix, which is the vestigial organ, a chubby little worm of tissue dangling off the massive corridor of the large intestine, a celebrated symbol of evolution's occasional failure to rid itself of obsolete developments. Useless. That's what vestigial really means. Useless, like the dusty VCR wedged into the shelf under your flat panel television, even though you no longer own any videotapes, and the very thought of even playing a videotape, the chunk and whir of that oblong plastic brick being slurped into the mechanical maw of the thing makes you shudder with inexplicable feelings of nausea and sadness. Oh, but back in your college years, your mom gave you that VCR when you were home for the holidays. And this magical engine of wonder and delight served you well for many years, conjuring up hours of Monty Python and Star Trek and all the porn you had the courage to rent from the creepy back room of that Korean video store. And so it remains in your possession, an artifact of a long-gone era of technological innocence, forever blinking midnight. The appendix, of course, is not the only useless part of your body. The utility of the grub-like pinky toe, with its tough little slab of greenish nail, has been regarded with skepticism. Neither science nor scripture has adequately addressed the mystery of male nipples. If you can live without a gallbladder, then why do you need one in the first place? Don't get me started on wisdom teeth. But what makes the appendix fascinating is not so much that it's useless, but that it can kill you. So, actually, less than useless. Its primary function is to explode without warning. It's a strange joke of evolution that we are all born with this deadly little time bomb tucked into the bottom shelf of our most important insides, as if the human body had been hastily manufactured by Samsung. The exploding appendix has always been a subject of special delight for small children, as of course it should be. The bizarre treachery of the appendix is disclosed to children at an early age, because their parents worry that their sons and daughters won't be adequately alarmed if their appendices should suddenly burst inside of them. When I was a child, it was tempting to categorize this as just one more incredibly stupid parental concern, because so many parental concerns are so incredibly stupid. Children often feel this way, that their parents are complete idiots, and I agree with them. Although I have no children of my own, my long years on this earth have given me the opportunity to witness many fine examples of parental idiocy across multiple generations, and it has been both delightful and demoralizing to realize that perfectly sensible children often grow up into perfectly idiotic parents who will perpetuate the same patently dumb shit on their children that they themselves were once subjected to by their own idiotic parents. This, too, must be evolution at work. Upon successfully reproducing, some genetic switch is flipped off in the parental brain so that the idiot parade can march on in perpetuity. It's the only way to explain how otherwise more or less functional adults, like, grown-ups with the minimal cognitive skills required to make mortgage payments or operate a microwave, can continue, generation after generation, to subscribe to variations of the same imbecilic, harebrained notions, such as, if you eat that hot dog and jump back in the pool, you will get cramps and drown. 13-year-old suburban girls wear color-coded plastic bracelets to advertise their sexual exploits to classmates. Those smeary rub-on tattoos dispensed by gumball machines are laced with LSD by drug dealers, hoping to hook kids on bad acid trips. Such dealers find their most lucrative venues at school playgrounds because there's just no market for selling recreational drugs to adults. Every Halloween, some of your neighbors succumb to the irresistible temptation to insert razor blades into apples and distribute them to unsuspecting children. An unsupervised child in possession of a large sack of Hershey bars and Skittles will nonetheless prefer to eat an apple, which may or may not contain a razor blade. Philip Larkin was right. Hysteria builds like a coastal shelf. The thing that kills me is that the same implausible rumors which were circulated by mimeograph at PTA meetings when I was a kid in the 70s are now circulated by my peers on Facebook and Twitter. Now, I don't want to get carried away. Pay attention, kids. Some parental fears really are based in the empirical universe. You really shouldn't run with scissors or climb into unmarked vans driven by strangers, and acute appendicitis really is more likely to occur in children than adults. And that is exactly why, whenever you had a pain in your side, your mother would anxiously inquire whether it was the left side or the right. Although I guarantee you that every time she asked this question, she struggled to remember which side mattered, because no one can ever remember which side matters. Even as I write these words, I myself can't remember. This, too, seems part of the evolutionary scheme, the long Darwinian struggle between human and appendix. In such situations, my own mother would consult the ancient leather-bound medical encyclopedia she had preserved from her own childhood in the 30s, the era in which 4 out of 5 lung surgeons recommended Lucky Strikes for their patients who smoked. Although modern antibiotics and polio vaccines went unmentioned in this tome, it was otherwise an impressive distillation of mid-20th century medical knowledge, and thus a reasonably accurate guide to the everyday ailments and maladies of the human body. In this regard, my mother probably held an advantage over modern-day mommies, who are likely to consult Google for medical advice, thus risking exposure to scientifically dubious theories concerning wheat gluten and measles vaccinations. Mid-20th century medical science took a dim view of vestigials. Like tonsils or foreskins, the appendix was dismissed as a less than essential body part that could be conveniently discarded in childhood with no more thought than you'd give to tossing an empty can of Schlitz out the window of your '55 Buick Roadmaster. Television writers of the black and white era loved appendectomies. If your rating slipped and you needed to inject some novelty into the clockwork universe of your bland family sitcom, well, a little routine surgery might be just the ticket. Timmy won't eat his French toast, doesn't want to go to school, says he's got a tummy ache. Mommy lays an anxious hand across the little ankle biter's forehead, frowns. Dr. Shapiro knocks at the door. Black bag in hand. "Oh, yes," he says, folding up his stethoscope. "I'm quite sure. You'll have to bring him in, I'm afraid." Mommy phones Daddy at the office, who grabs his hat and briefcase. Hospital scene, some lab coats, easy enough to borrow the set from some of the daytime soaps. Toss in your favorite doctor jokes and a pretty nurse and call it a day. You've titillated your viewers with a child in jeopardy and a taboo whiff of the human mortality, and now you can wrap up the whole thing, routine surgery, with a happy outcome of so little consequence that no future episode will have to acknowledge it ever happened. For the sake of variety, broken bones and dental catastrophes could be similarly deployed. But tonsillectomies were especially favored by sitcom writers, an even better choice than appendectomies, since tonsils used to be removed prophylactically. Vestigial. By my childhood in the 70s, doctors had stopped routinely yanking out tonsils. Turned out they might be useful after all. But tonsillitis continued to serve as a tried and true plot device on contemporary dreck like the Brady Bunch. In such episodes, the humor revolved around enticing a frightened child into an operating room with the prospect of unlimited ice cream to follow. These shows made surgery seem like an important rite of passage, But like stickball, swimming holes, and drugstore soda fountains, perfunctory tonsillectomies were yet another hallowed, character-forming American tradition that had somehow been excised from my polyester suburban childhood of Tang and Saturday morning cartoons. So I took note of such very special episodes with keen interest. They inspired in me a strange sense of envy. It wasn't the fucking ice cream. I wanted to be injured. The problem was I didn't play sports, and I was also a coward. Opportunities for broken bones were limited. When I was 8, I did manage to fracture my ankle after I threw a Superman cape over my shoulders and jumped off a one-story ledge onto the concrete surface of our driveway. My superpowers failed. My bravery was rewarded with a genuine plaster cast that could be signed by my classmates, but hobbling around on crutches turned out to be a remarkably shitty way to spend the summer. By the time I'd reached adulthood, I'd lost 2 of my wisdom teeth and my foreskin, not in that order. But I still had my tonsils and my appendix. My mom had been worried over nothing every time. As a young, newly independent adult, I still felt an obligation to worry whenever I got a pain in my side. I owed my mother that much. Although I could never remember which side mattered because I didn't own a medical encyclopedia and Google hadn't been invented yet. And by the time it was, I knew that a persistent pain in your side might be gas or cancer or the result of a sexual mishap. But whatever it is definitely not appendicitis. Unless, of course, it is. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Woo! All right. So I need to stop my hands from shaking. And so I'm going to disappear for 5 minutes and go back out front. You guys are now welcome to leave this room, do as you please, have some food, have some drinks, and I will see you outside, and I'll be happy to sign books for anybody else who would like them, and also just to say hi to everybody, just come by and say hello. And just give me 5 minutes so I can stop the shakes. Thank you. Cheers, everybody.